I'm Jesse Harding. I'm a designer in Omaha, Nebraska, and I work at Grain Mortar, a brand strategy and design studio. Well, I'm passionate about the outdoors. I'm passionate about design, and I'm passionate about history, especially family history. I think for a long time I was kind of paralyzed by indecision at all the different directions I could go in. And it felt like once you got on a track, you had to stay on that track and never get off, or else you'd be 10 steps behind. But I think I sort of realized that eventually you can weave all these different directions into something that's unique to you and that is kind of true to where your interests really are. And I think that's how you create something unique. After high school, I was pretty burned out and really wasn't excited about the prospect of going to college. So I flew up to Alaska and spent about 6 months just kind of backpacking and hitchhiking around. And it was sort of a rough introduction into the real world, like living out of a 40-liter backpack. And then for the other 6 months of the year off, I reached out to some people here in town who, the few of them that were either doing design or had tech companies, and I just kind of cold called them and asked to meet up with them and talk. And one of them was Eric Downs, who's the owner here at one of the owners here at Grain Mortar, and they brought me on as one of their first interns. So I kind of just banked on turning it into a full-time job, and I had never really opened Illustrator or Photoshop before, so I kind of just lied my way into a job, and luckily was able to learn fast enough on the job that they didn't fire me immediately, so that was fortunate. I got into family history 1 or 2 years ago when I visited my grandparents in Seattle. My grandfather had a couple strokes, and I hadn't seen him since then. And so when I went up to visit them, I wasn't really prepared for just how bad it was. But I walked into their house, and he didn't really recognize who I was. Over the course of a conversation, it seemed like he remembered more from his distant past than he remembered in sort of the short term. I went back to the house I was staying at and did a little research. Omaha has a museum here in town called the Durham, and they have a wonderful photo archive. There were actually a couple photos of my grandfather's family, his dad, and the family business. So I pulled those up and saved them, and the next day when I went back, I sort of showed them to him, and it became kind of the way that we were able to connect. Was as a guy who was struggling to kind of comprehend his present, the past was kind of the easiest way to make a connection with him. So that was sort of what started it, and then it just was a rabbit hole that I kept going down, and I would find more stuff, and it just sort of felt never ending. I'm actually going back to school for a degree in history. I'm not really sure what I'll end up doing with it, but back to sort of the passion part, I don't think it necessarily matters if I have a plan for it. If you have the interest and you have the drive to pursue it, I think inevitably a plan kind of materializes. I'm excited to see where it takes me.
Seems like it's worked for you so far.
Yeah. I mean, it hasn't made me any money, but it has given me a lot of joy. So